Alright, assuming that you guys can hear me, just letting you know that I'm going to start as soon as we have people joining in on our broadcast. So you might get some dead air at the beginning here. All right, someone's on with me right now. Not sure who yet, but someone is. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Whoever's there. All right. Well, if you can hear me, great. If you can't hear me, well, at least it's recorded and you'll be able to ask me questions about this later on. Want to go over a few things real quickly, mostly just kind of review stuff. Oh, I cannot hear. So I can't hear you guys, but I don't even see you guys right now. I don't know why. It used to show me everyone on the bottom of the screen. Let me go into the control room and I don't see anyone else. Um, I don't know why it's set up that way. But let me see if I can switch to cameraman mode. Who's just joined? Hide the audio. No, I don't want to do that. Broadcaster muted. No. So it should show you guys. Um, but I don't know why it's not showing you guys and you're not showing up. But I do see that I have one viewer. Um, so hey, we'll take what we can get. I do have the Q&A enabled, so I guess you use that if you do have a question or something's going wrong. Or you can also um, go to the event page on Google Plus and you can ask me questions there. I have that open on another window. Um, how does it work on your phone? Isaac, I see that. Um, about the best bet I can say is if you've got headphones, plug it in and click on the invite. That should take you to the Google Hangouts as long as you're on an Android phone and you have the Google Hangouts app installed. If you don't, well, your best bet is honestly going to be to watch it later when you're at a computer. Um, but I've done Google Hangouts on the phone before and they work pretty well as long as you have the app installed. If you don't have the app installed, it's not going to work very well. Okay, so guys, hopefully you guys have been keeping busy doing work for some of your other classes. Uh, I've been going through trying to put this class together, and in all honesty, I haven't put as many assignments together as I would like to, and I know you guys probably don't mind that, but you guys are here to learn, and so I feel like I'm kind of shortchanging you a little bit. Um, I'm going to be up in Utah no, not this coming weekend, but the first weekend in October, I'll be up in Utah, and I'll be staying at the Herd's house. I'll be staying with Cass. So if you have any questions, or if we want to do like a little meet and greet there, that would be pretty cool. Um, also, I will be up there on October 10th and 11th for the Epic Entrepreneurs Promoting Innovation and Creativity Conference that I would really, really, really enjoy if you guys would attend. We've put together a fantastic lineup of speakers. Um, some of the people you know, and no big deal. Okay, you probably know Connor Boyette. All right, his wife works at GMA. I guess it's his kids who are much younger than you, but they're involved with GMA. But he's the president of the Libertas Institute. Uh, really cool guy. Uh, have has a lot of really important things to say. Uh, also, Austin Craig, who I had the opportunity to meet over the phone just this past week, who was the kind of the subject. He and his wife Becky have been the subject of a documentary film that they filmed recently called Life on Bitcoin. And the Harmons, who you guys probably know pretty well, have been very involved in that project. Uh, So it'll be very cool to have Austin come and speak with us. Also, we're bringing in a speaker from out of town. And I don't know if you guys could hear that at all. Can you hear me at all? Um, but I'm bringing a speaker in from out of town, and that is T.K. Coleman, who is the education director for Praxis. And I know I mentioned this to you guys a little bit at the end of last week's lesson, but I'm bringing it up again because I am so excited about this. Um, and I don't see a whole lot of people come in. I have a few people registered so far, but it's a really cool opportunity. And I know some of you have other things going on. Some of you are going down to the Shakespeare Festival, and I understand, and that's cool. Um, in fact, I've got some good friends who can really tie Shakespeare into economics for you if you want to make it relevant to multiple classes at once. I'll send you some links. In fact, I'll post them up on Canvas later today. Um, but like I said, I feel like I've been kind of shortchanging you guys. So you are going to be seeing more assignments. Uh, and I want to make sure that I'm available. If you have any questions on the assignments, that discussion board is really what it's there for. Um, all right, awesome. Looks like you guys can hear me. Cool. So what the discussion really is there for is for you guys to not just ask questions or answer questions that I've asked you guys, but uh, to carry the conversation further. And you don't have to wait to respond to me. You can respond to, uh, oh, cool. Thanks for letting me know, Skylar. Um, yeah, cool. Thanks. I'm glad you guys are watching together. All right. So use that discussion board. There is uh, tons of articles, tons of resources, tons of stuff that I don't send you guys just because I'm not sure how much time you have. You know, it's really easy when I'm right there with you, but when you are um, when you're up in Utah and I'm down here, it can be pretty complicated because I don't know what kind of workload you have. It's hard for you guys to just call me. So if you have any questions and you just want to call me real quick, I think I emailed you all my phone number. You've got, you want to shoot me a text message, that's fine. Um, one thing I am going to include, um, hold on really quickly. All right, so one thing that I am going to make sure that I include is I'll send you guys my a link to my Twitter account that I use. And on my Twitter account, I'll send out information, some articles that are relevant to the classes that I'm teaching, um, updates on various programs and activities. Also, I do have a Facebook page. It's just Facebook/Hi Mr. Bogle. That's my professional page that I use. I'll put updates on there and stuff. So if you want to check some of that stuff out, you'd have to go like my page, and then I'll put some updates on there for you. But it's an easy way for me to share with you guys some things that I think are important, things that I think are relevant, uh, because I think that for this, you guys are taking your learning into your own hands, and that's a big thing. Um, all that you guys really need is someone to put the right resources there in front of you to help you discover uh, and help you differentiate between good and bad information, if that makes sense. Okay, so all right. All right. Sorry, I'm trying to communicate on different platforms all at the same time. Okay, so just review. Uh, we've talked a little bit before about how humans act, how people make choices, how choices come with trade-offs, and how when people make those choices, it helps us be able to understand how they value different things and how they value one thing higher than another. that values aren't an objective measurement. There's no right price for any product, um, but that values are subjective, meaning that it's all a ranking of preferences. Do I prefer my Polar Pop or do I prefer my 85 cents? Which one do I prefer? Well, obviously, you know which one I prefer because you see what I have. Um, Granted, you probably assume that I have several 85 cents. So is it really that I gave up all my money? No, it's each unit of 85 cents because we're making decisions on the margin. Okay. And so now we've talked a little bit about what's going on inside of our heads as far as economics is concerned. Now I want to look outward a little bit because economics is all about the resources that are around us and how we choose to use those resources. It's not just human action, but it's human action in relation to how we use our resources, including time. Okay. So there's a couple things that I want you guys to understand. Okay. So the first is the difference between production versus consumption. All right. So I don't know if you can see that. Production versus consumption. Either way, even if you can see, you probably can't read my handwriting very well. And it's probably going to look backwards to you. Oh well, big deal. So when I use resources, I'm producing something, but I'm also consuming a resource in one state, and I'm producing it into something else. So I can take trees. Trees are a natural resource, and I can take those trees and I can apply my energy, my creative energy to it, and I could turn those trees into lumber. And I can take that lumber and I can use that lumber to build some furniture. Now I went from trees to lumber to furniture, and I probably used other resources along the way. Did I create something or did I consume something? Well, I created more of one resource of more I created more of one resource by consuming some of another resource. So there's no like fixed absolute number of resources available. But what we can do is we can look at what types of resources people value more of. And that's where we're starting to get into a bigger market picture of how an economy works. Okay. So what different kinds of resources do we have available to us, right? Well, I'm going to type some of them up here. Actually, I'm going to turn this so that you guys have my whiteboard. But I don't have my whiteboard back there. Okay. Hold on a sec. Let me erase my whiteboard real quick. All right, let's try that again. Okay, so now I can adjust my camera so you guys can see my whiteboard a little bit. Um, okay, so now you can see my whiteboard, and the whiteboard is good because then I get to draw on it. Okay, um, this is honestly, I know this is kind of silly. I'm going to take a minute and play around. But this is one of my favorite features of the Google Plus Hangouts is that I can, yeah, I want to look, oh, there's a person there, and I want to put a mask on this person. Um, you know what, today I'm wearing a brown and polka dot bow tie, but what if I want to wear a red polka dot bow tie? Okay, so now I'm wearing a red polka dot bow tie, and it kind of moves with me. All right, kind of silly, I know. All right, let me add some text up here for you. What kind of resources do we have available to us that we can use both in a productive and in a consumptive manner? The first one is we have a resource called land. Boom, right there. Oh, whoops. All right, boom. We've got a resource called land. And when I talk about land, uh, I'm not just talking about resources that are dirt, soil, rock, minerals. No, land is what we consider any raw resource in its unfinished, raw, natural state. Okay. So some other examples of land in an economic sense would be trees, wild animals, air, water, um, iron ore, copper ore, things like that in their raw, uh, unfinished. They're not in the sense that we're going to use them. You know, um, and who owns the land? How do we determine who owns the land? Um, maybe I can get you guys to comment or ask questions. I'm not quite sure how we can do this. Let me see if I can turn other cameras on. When I click on cameraman, uh, hmm. All right. Well, it doesn't have you guys in here as viewers, so sorry. All right. Well, how do we come to own land? Can we just claim, well, I bought that land from someone? Because now the question is, well, how did they come to own it? And how did they come to own it? Who did they get it from? And how did they come to own this land? Well, there's a pretty smart philosopher, sorry, philosopher, pretty smart economist by the name of Murray Rothbard. Um, and Professor Rothbard had a pretty good explanation for this, is how we come to describe ownership of land based on goodness, sorry, computer's going crazy here. We determine ownership of land based on who improves the land first. Okay. So imagine you're a rancher, okay? And you're walking along and you're walking along, and all of a sudden you come along, or you come upon a fence. What do you think that fence is telling you? Um, my guess is that fence is giving you a pretty good indication that someone claims that land. Well, did they improve upon it? Are they using it? I don't really know yet, but I know there's a fence. Okay. And that fence says someone is claiming this land. Well, the first thing I got to ask, have they improved the land in some way? Well, yeah, they have. By putting a fence around it, they've increased its capacity to be productive. Okay. So by putting a fence around this big old empty field of land, now what can I do with it? Hold on, hold on. So now I can do something with this land, right? Uh, so the first owner then gets rights of use of the land. Okay. Well, by claiming ownership over the land, what am I doing? Well, by claiming ownership over the land, I'm declaring that I have the privilege of determining how that land gets used, but I also am declaring that I have the privilege of restricting others from using that land. That's where ownership comes from, the idea that not only do you have the opportunity to use that resource in a way that you see fit, but that you have the ability to restrict others from using that resource. Okay. So our first resource that we talked about, or first category of resource that we talked about, is land. Now we've got another category of resource that I want to talk to you guys about, and this one's a little bit fun to talk about. Is we've got a resource that we are going to call labor. And labor is your work, your physical exercise, um, your productive capacity to do things, to make stuff, to act in a way that is any bit productive. Okay, so we've actually already talked a little bit about how labor has made land more productive. How do we do that? Well, someone took their land in a raw resource, raw natural state, and they applied their labor to it. They took that field and they built a fence around it. Well, now what is that fenced in field? It's no longer just a raw natural resource, it's a pasture. And that actually gets us to our third natural resource, or I mean our third resource, and that is capital. But before I talk too much about capital, I want to spend a little bit of time on labor. Okay. Who owns your labor? Well, I mean, it's pretty safe to say that you own your labor, right? I don't know who else owns it. Um, and what would we call it if someone else owned your labor? Well, most of the time, if we claim that someone else owns your labor, well, we call that slavery, right? Because we're assuming that someone else has a higher claim on your life and on the product of your energy than you do. Okay. Um, I want to watch a short video with you guys real quick, and well, you know what? I'm just going to put it up on the Canvas page. So check out the Canvas page today because I'm going to add some cool stuff on there, probably later tonight. Some assignments. There's actually going to be a game. If you've ever played the game Stick Wars, that's going to be part of your homework this week. Just kind of as a review of economic concepts up to this point, Stick Wars, and how economic concepts apply to the game, because they do. But I wanted to make sure that we get our factors of production lesson in before we played Stick Wars, because I want to talk about how the factors of production are used in the game. All right. So you own your labor. How do we know that you own your labor? Well, because in order for um, uh, okay, sorry, Isaac, I'm trying to get this squared away for you. This should be broadcasting live. Okay, to the invite. Well, let me try something real quick and let me invite myself. So I'm going to invite myself to this video so that I can see what you guys see. So give me just a second while I take a look here. And my phone is trying to go crazy. All right. Sorry, guys. Let me send another invitation real quick, too. All right. Hmm.
All right, guys.
Okay,
Ooh, I can
girls.
hear someone. I see Kaz and Elise.
Yeah, Isaac's here too.
Oh,
They couldn't get
awesome.
on. They're out of here now. Do you have any other students that have been able to get on?
Yeah, actually, I've got quite a few.
Okay, good deal.
Ooh, land, labor, and capital.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Okay,
You guys
I'm out of here now.
have to watch like the first 15 minutes of this. Sorry,
Yeah.
guys. I don't know why this has been so difficult. Um, I like this setup so much more than the other setup. So I'm glad you're here. Thanks for joining me. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick recap just so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Talking about factors of production, and these are economic resources that we have available to us. Before we've been talking about how humans choose and humans act, and we think that we can apply economic resources, or we can apply the economic calculation to everything in life, and you go, okay, well, Bogle, that's a bit of a stretch, but we absolutely can. Okay, and we do that by looking at the various factors of production. So we're either producing resources or we're consuming resources. Sometimes we're doing both at the same time. In fact, most of the time we're doing both at the same time. We just haven't discovered what the resource is that we're producing yet. All right, so land. In an economic sense, land is simply all natural resources in their raw, unfinished state. So if I say forests or trees are land, I'm not just talking about dirt and soil and the dirt that you dig in, okay? I'm talking about all natural resources. So if I give you guys trees, that's one example. Give me another example of a natural resource that you guys can think of.
Cool. Yeah.
Okay, coal that's
Iron.
in the ground, right? Um, sure, absolutely. What about wild animals, water running in the stream, fish in the ocean, uh, oxygen in the air? Those are all land. They all fit under raw natural resources. And how do we determine who owns the land? This can be kind of a tricky one. What do you guys think? How do you think we determine who owns land?
You claim it?
Okay, for the most part, that's kind of how it happens originally. Okay, this is what's called the homesteading, whoops, the homesteading theory of land ownership, and that is that whoever does something finds land, no one's using it, there's no obvious signs that anyone has claimed it already. You come in and you make some kind of improvements to the land. You're homesteading on the land. Now, how do you improve the land in any way, shape, or form? And is it really all that difficult? Well, no. I mean, what if I simply put up a sign that says property of so and so? Well, okay, that's kind of claiming the land. That's definitely claiming ownership of it. But am I doing anything to really improve the land at this point? Maybe not. But what if I put up a fence around the land? What if I build a house on it? What if I till the ground and turn it into farm soil? Well, now I've done more than just claim the land. I've actually done something to improve the land. Okay. So this is the idea. What you used to see, you know, and even we did this when we landed on the moon, right? What's the idea of planting your flag there? Well, you plant your flag and you're claiming, I own this. And that's so bogus, okay? Because by simply declaring that I own something, well, I can say, I own Jupiter. Does that mean that I actually own Jupiter? No, of course not. The idea is that I have to actually do something to improve the current natural state of Jupiter in order to claim ownership, not over the entire planet, but ownership over at least what I have improved on. Okay? And I know someone's going to come along and say, well, my mere presence is an improvement upon the entire planet, therefore I own the planet. And sorry, nice try enforcing that right, or nice try, or good luck enforcing that ownership. Okay. But generally, we follow the homesteading theory of original property ownership, and that was not necessarily originated from Murray Rothbard, from economist Murray Rothbard, but he is definitely one who popularized and did a lot more work on that. Um, so if you're ever interested in learning more about land ownership, look up Murray Rothbard and his theory of homesteading. All right. I don't know if I can delete that without getting rid of the whole thing. That's all right. Okay. So how do we improve land? Well, we improve land by applying our labor to it. This is going to sound like a trick question, and it's not. It's not intended to be, at least. Who owns your labor? I guess we should start by asking, what is labor? Okay. And labor is simply your effort, your energy, the work that you can do that is productive. And productive doesn't always mean that you're making something new, because productive can mean that you're doing demolition on an old building so that it enables a clear space to be made, because a clear space is more valuable than the old building that was there. But labor simply means that you're engaged in productive activity. Can we say that hanging out with friends is labor? What do you guys think? Is that productive work?
Depends.
It does depend, and that's kind of the tricky thing, because you can say, well, this is an investment in my mental sanity, or this is I really needed some time with my friends, so me hanging out with my friends is me laboring to improve my life at this point. Okay, are you creating value for someone? Sure, you're creating value for yourself, and ideally you're creating value for your friends as well. So you're applying your productive efforts of lounging on the couch, eating popcorn, and playing video games. And yes, contrary to what your mom and dad want to tell you, that is labor. That is work. Okay, at least from an economic sense. Now, like I said, who owns your labor? Well, you do, right? So what do we call it if someone else owns your labor? What do you think that means?
Service.
Okay, well, you can do service, but that doesn't necessarily mean that someone else owns it. And maybe this is something I skipped, because there's two parts to ownership that I kind of jumped over earlier in the video when you guys weren't watching. One part of ownership is stating that someone else has the claim to use a resource however they want. So if I own land, I can do whatever I want with it, right? I can build a house, I can build a farm, I can dig for oil, I can mine for gold. If I own the land, I can do whatever I want with it. But the second part, and this is actually the more important part of ownership, is I have the ability to exclude other people from using that resource. So if I own my labor, okay, I own it. It's my labor. Sorry, I keep hitting the microphone. It's probably loud for you guys. If I own my labor, one, that means I can use it however I best see fit. And two, that means I can exclude other people from determining how I use my labor. So if I own my labor and I'm doing service for someone else, well, I'm still choosing to do that action. But if someone else owns my labor, meaning they get to tell me what to do and I have to do it, um, what do you think that would be called?
Slaver.
What'd you say?
Slavery.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's slavery. Okay, the idea that if you don't own your body and the labor that it can produce, that means that someone else does. And if someone else owns your labor, then you are a slave to that other person. Okay. Now here's kind of a trick question. Does that mean that when your mom tells you to clean your room, that she has a higher claim to your labor than you do? And if so, does that mean that your mom thinks of you as a slave?
Yes.
No, nice try, but no, that's not what it means. Okay. What it really means is that even though ultimately your parents don't own your labor, they're going to use some coercive means to try and get you to use your labor in certain ways, right? And those coercive means might be uh, offering compensation for doing your or for buying your labor. I mean, I know Kaz recently got a job. I don't know if anyone else has a job, but uh, isn't that essentially what you're doing? Is you're selling your labor? Okay, so you've agreed to sell your labor to someone else for a certain period of time. Now, in the case of you at home with your parents, I don't know that this isn't a parenting class, but the perspective that they probably take is, I already bought your labor, son. I bought your food, I give you transportation, I buy your clothes. Oh, I done paid for your labor. And so then they feel a right um, to coerce you into doing your chores. Okay. And I'm looking, and I know we kind of got a late start because of some tech issues, but I don't have a lot of time. I want to make sure that I try and finish up within our 3:30 time here, and that's 3:30 my time, not 3:30 your time. So let's take a look at this. So land, raw natural resources, labor is my physical work, and it doesn't have to be work that I do with my hands. It can be work that I do with my mind. It can be, um, it's the idea of work smarter, not harder. Okay, and with labor, I can be doing mental labor. I could be an accountant for a living, where I'm going to be doing uh, more mental labor than I am physical labor. It can also be emotional labor. Uh, someone who's a therapist is going to offer emotional labor to other people. What they really need is some kind of emotional support, and that's still labor because it's productive energy that your body produces. Um, Now, if you apply your labor to raw natural resources, you can create new resources, and we're going to call those resources capital goods or capital resources. You guys have probably heard the term capital before applied to money. We say, okay, well, money is capital. Well, it's true. Money is capital. Why? Because it's a man-made resource. It's something that does not exist in nature. Money does not exist in nature. But that doesn't mean that all capital is money. Money is capital, but not all capital is money. All right? So other kinds of capital that exist would be, factories, um, machinery, even, and I know this sounds funny, but domesticated animals. Domesticated animals aren't land. They're not a raw natural resource. They have had human labor applied to them over and over and over for millennia until they become capital. Okay? Because they've been changed in such a way that they're not wild animals anymore. Same thing with farmland. Farmland is capital. Why? Because it's been tamed, it's been manipulated by mankind and turned into something that would be more productive than it otherwise would be on its own. Um, and I think it was, what, 2 weeks ago? Yeah, 2 weeks ago we had a national holiday. And I don't know about you guys, but I got the day off school. What holiday was that?
Labor Day.
Labor Day. And why on earth do we celebrate Labor Day? Anyone know? It has something to do with the government killing a lot of labor union protesters. Go back and do your own research on the history of Labor Day. It's fascinating. Okay? The question is, why do laborers or people who work for a living often feel threatened by capital? Well, think about this. Okay? How difficult is it to take someone's order at Burger King? Is that really a hard thing to do? No, it's really not. I mean, okay, maybe they talk fast or they have a funny accent, but you're hitting pictures on a screen, and maybe uh, if you do it in the right order, you practice it, it's a piece of cake, right? But you as a person taking that order are labor. The business that hires you, that Burger King, they have to pay you for your labor. Okay? And what do we pay in order to borrow someone else's labor? What do I have to
Money.
pay? Yeah. And when I pay a laborer, I generally call that a wage. Okay. And it's not a very good term, but when I'm using someone else's land, I'll call it a lease. And when I have to pay for the use of someone else's capital, it gets paid interest. Okay. So we pay wages to laborers, we pay a lease to use other people's property or their land, or we will pay interest to use other people's capital, especially when we're talking about money. Um, so I have to pay you a wage. And what if your wage suddenly gets really, really high? Like, gee, I don't know, you're just too expensive. Or maybe I can find a computer that comes along and makes that job cheaper. I can buy the computer. I buy the computer once, and now that computer is cheaper than me paying you to take the order. Well, what's that going to do to your job? Chances are you're not going to have it for very long. Okay? Because maybe you're taking orders wrong, maybe you're just slow. I don't know what the deal is, but I can take capital goods, computers, machinery, robots, and I can replace labor with capital. But does that mean that I've necessarily destroyed jobs by investing in capital? Because ultimately, that's what capitalism is. Capitalism is the process by which we save wealth and we invest in new capital, and that creates more wealth. Does that mean that capitalism absolutely destroys jobs? And that's the question that Karl Marx was really trying to answer in his book Das Kapital. And he was saying that capital destroys jobs, therefore capital is bad for laborers or bad for the workers. And since people have a natural right to their labor, then they had a natural right to earn a wage, and that therefore capital or investing in new machines and new factories was an evil, bad thing, and that needed to be abolished. Well, let me tell you, Marx was a pretty foolish guy because that's not what capital does at all. what capital actually does is it might reallocate where labor is needed in an economy. So if I have someone who's working a minimum wage job at McDonald's flipping hamburgers, and I realize, you know what, this person is not very helpful. They think that they deserve $15 an hour, and they go out and they picket, they go on strike all the time. This is bogus. I can buy a computer, and this computer is going to replace this person doing their job. I'm going to invest in capital. And I might have destroyed that one job at Burger King. But what did I create in its place? What I created in its place was a demand for people to build computers and other high-end equipment, probably making more money than that guy was making as an order taker at Burger King. Okay, so this is something that I want you guys to make sure you understand is, and I'll put some readings up on this in probably about 10 minutes here, is that capital and labor are not opposing forces. Okay, capital actually makes labor more productive than it previously would have been. All right. So there's a famous story of Milton Friedman, and he goes and he visits China, and this is during the height of communist power in China, uh, and he's talking to one of their advisors over there, and they go and they visit this work project that they have, where they're digging this giant canal, and he noticed that there's thousands of workers, and they all have shovels, and they're digging this canal with shovels. And Milton Friedman is just puzzled by this. And so he asks this Chinese consulate or Chinese ambassador, whoever it was, says, why on earth are they digging this canal with shovels? Why don't they use tractors or heavy equipment? And the guy says, well, do you know how many jobs that will destroy? This project is not about the canal. This project is about giving people jobs. Well, okay, I guess that kind of makes sense. When you're not actually building stuff to be productive, but when you're making work for the sake of having work for people to do, all right, maybe you don't want them to be very productive. But let's say you're actually trying to do good things, productive things in an economy, and you generally try to produce things that people want, like, gee, I don't know, canals. We can use those resources more productively when we employ both labor and capital. Okay? And they could reduce the amount of time it takes to make new products. They can reduce the amount of energy it takes to make new products. They can make the manufacturing process safer, more cost effective. And we look at the Industrial Revolution and child labor, and oh man, it was so horrible, it was so awful, it was so dangerous, right? Well, yeah, part of it is true. There was some dangers for kids in the workplace. But compare that to what kids were doing before. Well, before kids were, well, gee, I don't know, dying of starvation. Okay, well maybe now the Industrial Revolution doesn't look so bad. Well, why do you guys think that you have the opportunity to go to school? Well, because capital accumulation has made labor so effective that most families can earn enough income without having to send their kids to work. Now, granted, you might want to send your kids to work so that they learn how, but you don't need to in order to make ends meet. And that's what enabled kids to go to school or to take on various learning activities. All right? So we've got one more factor of production that I want to talk to you guys about, but we're going to go over it in a lot more depth later on. And that last factor of production that is key among all the factors of production is the simple idea of entrepreneurship. Okay? Because entrepreneurship is really nothing more than your ability to create something new and innovative in your mind applying your labor to land, to uh, other capital goods, and organizing them in a way that they are more valuable than they previously would have been. Okay? Does it take labor, or I'm sorry, does it take entrepreneurship to make labor valuable? Yes, it does. Does it take entrepreneurship to make land more valuable? Yes, it does. And it also requires entrepreneurship to make capital more valuable. What do we do? I mean, entrepreneurship is not just owning a business. Entrepreneurship, at the very root of it, is simply uh, undertaking a project to create more value. In fact, entrepreneurship uh, gets its root from a French word. It's a French compound word that says entreprendre, which means to enter and to take. All right. So to enter and take, or to undertake, or to do something new, creative, innovative, and you're creating value, or at least that's the goal. You're trying to create value for other people. And how do entrepreneurs know if they're creating value for other people? Well, when their entrepreneurial ventures earn them a profit. And I don't want to give away too much because I'm going to come up and talk with you guys about this in just a few weeks. But profit does not necessarily mean more money. Profit is essentially anything that you value in increasing amounts. So if your value is money, sure, yeah, profit is increasing amounts of money. But what if something that you really value, again, remember this is based on your subjective values, what if you really value friendship? Can you be profitable in friendship? Absolutely you can. As you'll see as we move forward, you can hear it later. All right. Although maybe what I need to mute you guys real quickly. All right. Sorry. You're muted right now, just so you know. Just so that the audio doesn't fill in on everyone else's audio when you watch this later. Okay. But this is the big thing that I want you guys to come away with is that entrepreneurship is the means of taking the other three factors of production and creating better stuff with it. Um, and entrepreneurs get paid in profit, and that's a great thing. Okay, there's nothing wrong with profit. Um, Now, we're going to talk in a few weeks about how you can get profit through peaceful means, or you can get profit through coercion and through institutional force, through the government and all that stuff, and how that's not really profit. Okay. Um, but ideally, those are the four main factors of production: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. And uh, each one of those can be owned or is owned by various individuals. And when we use someone else's factors of production, we have to compensate them for that. And we talked about the different categories of compensation. Um, so just remember, when you have a job and you're collecting wages, your compensation for that job, for your labor, is your wage. You're selling your labor in exchange for money, for that paycheck. Entrepreneurs, they're a little bit different, is they're using their energy to create something new and innovative, and the market rewards them or compensates them for their innovation with profit. All right. Uh, we're a little bit over 3:30, and I know you guys probably have other things to go to, and I have Carson's baseball game to go to. Uh, oops. But do you guys? Let me unmute you guys. Sorry, that's what I was really trying to do. Click on myself. And I'm just trying to unmute you guys. Okay. Nope, nope, you're still muted. Can you guys unmute yourself? Just go to the top middle of your screen, click on the microphone. In the window that you're looking at, the Google Plus window, or are you just watching? Because I can't hear you guys right now because you're muted. Oh, you know what I can do? No, not capture. Cameraman. Or there you go. All right. Boom. There you go. You guys are unmuted. Let's get rid of that captured um, garbage. Sorry. Okay. So real quickly before we wrap up, any questions that you guys have? I mentioned it earlier on. I'm going to start giving a few more assignments. You haven't had very many assignments for the last probably 2 weeks, but you're going to have a few more. Uh, Nothing too heavy, just because I'm not there and you're not here, so I don't know what kind of workload you guys have. But I want to make sure that you guys are actually getting the education that you're paying for, or that your parents are paying for. So I'm going to have a few more reading assignments, some more videos to watch. After your fall break, we're going to get a little bit more intense. Right now, we're just covering some of the basic stuff. But before we move on, do you guys have any questions?
Not really.
Okay, you understand land, you understand labor, you understand capital. Entrepreneurship, you're never going to really understand. Just trust me on that. Because it's one of those things that any sane person, no sane person ever becomes an entrepreneur. It takes a little bit of craziness to be an entrepreneur. Um, and I'll share some articles with you guys on entrepreneurship on our Canvas page. So make sure that you check that out today and tomorrow, because if I am up until 2 o'clock in the morning adding stuff to the Canvas page, you're not going to see it. So make sure that you check it tomorrow as well. You'll see the new assignment notifications. And if you guys don't have any questions, then I guess we'll wrap up and we'll see you guys later. Always feel free to send me or call me on the phone or send me a text message or email me if you ever have any questions. All right? Cool.
All right.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Sweet.
Thanks.
Yep. Take it easy.